Another thing you have to have is some, for the Latin chasuble, is some elastic this long. It doesn't have to be gold elastic. It can be white elastic, but if it is white elastic, you're going to have to make a little sleeve to put it in so it will match your vestment. You're just a little tube that you can run the elastic into it. This is for the maniple. Maniples go over the arm, and they're kept closed sometimes by tapes that are tied, which means the priest has to either get the altar boy to come and tie it for him, or sometimes there's a tab there with a pin. He has to one-handedly tie it or pin it, which is difficult because the priest, when he goes up to the pulpit to give the sermon, will take the maniple off and lay it across the book on the altar, which means that after the sermon he has to go put the thing back on again, and now he's one-handed and there's no altar boy here to help him. The altar boy's kneeling down there unless he calls him up, or he has a master of ceremonies altar boy to help him do it. So we've found that by using elastic on the maniple and putting it around here, you can pull it out. He can slip it over his arm. The elastic will then come in and will grab his clothing, and he can move his arm around and it won't come off, but it will. It's easier for him because he can do it one-handed. So you only need about 6 inches of it, of a elastic. White is the more common kind. I was able to find this roll of gold elastic, which has lasted me for quite a few years. I use it for classes, but I don't sell it on, you can't buy it from me on my website because I won't sell it. Because when that's gone, I haven't been able to find any more of it. I keep looking, but I haven't been able to find any more of it. So, and this is nice because I don't have to I can just sew this down. It's gold and it looks good, and I don't have to put a cover for it. But you need about 6 inches, 8 inches of elastic for the maniple. For the chasuble, you need some kind of tape. The priest will put the vestment on, and if it's the kind that connects here at the chest, which is the kind we're going to make, there's tapes in the back that he wraps around and pulls to the front and ties. And so you need tapes to do that. If it's the type that connects at the shoulder, they don't use tapes. It's just the whole weight of the vestment keeps it in place. But the type that connects here, they need the tapes because they tend to shift up or down, and it holds it in place. You can get a big roll of tape like this one from my favorite spot place where I get most of my trims. Or if you go to Joann's, you can get the packages of tapes, in which case you need 2. Because you need about 4 yards, and the packages only come in 2-yard pieces. So you'll need 2 yards to go one direction and 2 yards to go the other direction. So you need tapes for your chasuble. And you also need 2 burst boards. Now these are, notice they come in nice colors. It doesn't matter. The other side is always white. And so you can have red ones, black ones, it doesn't matter. These I get from a framing shop. Oh, it's good to go in and make friends with somebody who has a framing shop. There's an art store near here, and they do framing, and they always have scraps of mat board, and that's what this is, mat board for frames. And they're more than glad to cut up their scraps for you, and they will often just give them to you. They never charge me for mat boards. I just go in and tell them I need 20 9x9 squares. These are 9x9, and it doesn't matter because it doesn't matter what color they are. They will, and then they'll call me and say, "We got your mat boards," and I'll just go pick them up. So you need 2 for the burst. This is for the burst. The burst can use cardboard. Paul often with Paul's they often use a plastic insert, but that's because it's linen and it's near the chalice with the wine. The burst isn't. The burst is a side, and it's used for the chalice veil, so it can have cardboard, just something to stiffen it, and that's the mat board. So you, For a Gothic vestment, you need, instead of tapes, you need snaps. But we're not making that, we're making today we're making a Latin chasuble. So those are some of the, it's also pretty necessary to have a ripper because, you know, we make mistakes. And as much as I hate to rip anything, I try not to rip things. I try to sew it that I don't have to. I always end up ripping something.
You make mistakes, sister?
Yes, I do.
I
make
know that.
mistakes.
I know that.
Yeah, you didn't know
Learn
that.
something new every day.
I don't like my students to know that the teacher ever makes a mistake. In class, you can kind of cover it up because
I see.
How would you know if
I know,
made
right?
a mistake, right? So yeah, I make mistakes, and needles. We do some hand sewing. The burst will end up having to be sewn, finished, closed by hand. Sometimes there's a few other things you might need to sew by hand. Though when I make a vestment, I do as little hand sewing as possible. Again, because I'm lazy, but also because I can't see that well anymore. And it's hard for me to thread a needle. And after having threaded the needle, it's hard to see where to put the needle, where I'm sewing. That's why I do as much as I can on a sewing machine, and that's why I went from hand embroidery to machine embroidery, because I can't see to hand embroider anymore. So, all right. So these are most of the materials that you need. Again, some of them are optional. You can certainly get away with not having, you know, one of these and not having these scissors, but a lot of the other things are necessary. You need an ironing board, and in lieu of having an ironing board, you also need a large work surface. So if you're using your kitchen table or your dining room table, you're going to need to protect it because you're going to be using steam. Now this table is the table I use for sewing, and I have a piece of plastic that covers the table because I had to refinish the table after I'd made a few vestments because I totally ruined the top of the table from the moisture. So after refinishing the table, now I have plastic that covers it. And we take this off, we cut on the table, we pin on the table. It's easier than trying to pin through this. This is a huge ironing board cover that was made for me by one of my students. I used to use a blanket and a sheet. And that's handy if you don't have something like that. Just pad your table with a blanket or sheet, or that one over there is a Teflon titanium pad that can go on top of the blanket. It's just it's large, but it's not quite large enough. But this is made of fleece or that fake lamb's wool, and ironing cover material, which is a metallic cloth, and both of these came from Joann's. So you can do pretty much the same thing to cover your table. I know of a lady who's had a husband who loved her very much, obviously, because he made her. He took a piece of that foam board, the kind of thick foam that they put in walls, the styrofoam, and he cut a piece to fit the table, and then he covered it with cotton duck, and she pins right down into the styrofoam when she pins, and she irons on it, and so she has the best of both worlds. I haven't gone to that extent of making something like that. I'll use this. This is a nice thing I got at the dollar store, and this is used for taking all the threads off the table because they get there, and it's a huge lint brush. Work one way it comes off, and the other way it goes on. So those are handy things. So you need an ironing board. You need an iron and a good work surface. If you don't have a large table or a table that's large enough, you can use the floor, but make sure it's clean. Worst comes to worst, you can use a large floor. Maybe your parish has some tables that you can go over there and borrow their tables in their cafeteria or whatever and do some of the work there on their tables. I know people who do that. You need an iron that has that can do steam, and Preferably not too high a steam setting. I have 3 irons up there. One does steam on wool and one does it on silk. So, I mean, you don't want the iron to get too hot. Most of the fabrics we work with these days aren't silk. Most of them are, these are polyester acetate, and they will go up to a wool setting, but they won't go to a linen setting without really, you can melt them. So, you can check your iron with your fabric and make sure that it's doesn't get too hot. You have to be able to use steam, and you want a steam iron that doesn't leak, so you don't get water stains all over your fabric. If your steam iron starts to leak considerably, go get another one. And you don't have to invest in some of these expensive irons that cost $300 or $400 or even $100. Go to Walmart and get a $19 iron. Just make sure it has steam setting. I replace irons almost on a yearly basis, because you drop them or something like that, and or after a while they start to leak. It's time to replace it. And you know, I'd rather replace it with a $19 iron than replace a $100 iron, and I don't see that they do any better than that. All right, so those are some of your essentials. You need a pattern, and you need fabric and trims, and that's the next thing we're going to look at.